Welcome to Comfort Crime with Lindsay Sanchez, a cozy mystery podcast where no actual crimes have been committed. Today we'll continue Bodies at Brunch, a cozy mystery about Sienna, who didn't want much, just a friend or two in the sprawling city of London she now calls home. But when their weekly gathering turns deadly, fitting in is the least of Sienna's problems, because one of her new friends might be a murderer. If this is your first time joining us, welcome, and please start with Chapter 1. For everyone else, we'll head to Chapter 3, but first, an update. You know me, I'm always on the hunt for a great cozy mystery, and right now, I've just started The Impossible Fortune, the 5th book in Richard Osman's beloved Thursday Murder Club series. I genuinely enjoyed the first book when it came out years ago. Not so much the movie adaptation, but that's a different story for a different day. Since then, the series has generally kept me entertained, some installments more than others, but I'm going in with my fingers firmly crossed that this one delivers all the charm, wit, and delightfully unexpected twists that the series is known for. If you've read it, no spoilers, but I would love to hear what you think. And more importantly, I need your recommendations. If you know of a cozy mystery that must go on my reading list, I want to hear about it. Just join the newsletter and reply to my next email. Tell me what you're reading. I read every single message, and honestly, some of my all-time favorite discoveries have come straight from you, my wonderful readers. All right, let's get started with Chapter 3. Bodies at Brunch, Chapter 3. Thankfully, once Sienna's message went through, Daniel didn't ask questions. He just gave her a thumbs up and said he and the kids would meet her at Mango City for dinner. After 7 years of marriage, she knew he'd have an alarm set to make sure he left work in time to get the kids. For one mad moment, Sienna considered not going back inside. She wanted to drop the pan and walk back through the crowd on Fleet Street and get her children. She wanted to pick up half-price sushi from the shop on the corner for dinner and tuck her kids into bed. She wanted to forget that brunch and the body they'd found in the kitchen had ever happened. 2 hours ago, the only thing Sienna had wanted was to get to know the women sitting around the table. Now, she wished she'd never come. But she couldn't run. No matter how much she wanted to avoid talking to the police and wondering which woman in there had been desperate or devious enough to commit murder, she knew she had to do her part to help. She took a few deep breaths, squared her shoulders, and walked back through the blue door of Café Bebe. Inside, an officer took the pan with a gloved hand and ushered her through to the dining room. Each of the other 6 women were seated at separate tables, with varying levels of surprise written on their faces as Sienna walked in. "Thank goodness you're okay." Chloe got up from her seat and started toward her. "Please stay seated." A second officer with light brown hair poking out from under her cap ordered Chloe back to her table. "Is this the 7th woman?" she asked. "The one that left out the back door?" "Yes." Chloe sat slowly back in her chair, her tan jacket perfectly blending in with the upholstered seat back behind her. Had she been wearing that earlier? Sienna couldn't remember. The other women watched as the officer directed her to the table near the window. "I didn't leave," Sienna said, before the officer could start the conversation. "There was a person at the back door." The officer raised her eyebrows, but pulled out a pencil and a notebook and started writing. "They left on a motorcycle. I tried to stop them, but they got away." "And what did this person look like?" "They were wearing a helmet. I couldn't see their face." "Did you see anything?" The officer had her pencil poised, ready to write, though her expression was anything but optimistic. "They were wearing all black leather, and I think the bike was blue." She hated how unsure her voice sounded, even in her own ears, but this was her first body. They couldn't expect her to be a professional. "So you chased away this mystery biker and went around the building?" "The door was locked from the outside, so the biker must have had a key, unless someone had left the door cracked." "Did you notice the door open when you found the body?" Honestly, Sienna flushed, her story sounding stupider by the minute. "Honestly, I didn't even notice the back door until it opened. And then it scared me so badly I grabbed the nearest pan." "Why would being scared cause you to grab a pan?" "Protection?" "And did you touch anything else in the kitchen?" "No." "See any other mysterious intruders?" "No." "Did you know the victim?" "No." It was probably just the officer's job. She was trained to ask everyone these questions, but there was something in her tone that made it seem like she thought Sienna was lying. "I never saw him before I walked through that door today." Sienna worked to keep her voice calm, the shock of the body and the blood seeping into her consciousness. The realization that this officer in front of her likely thought she was the killer. "It's not like he's my secret lover or anything. I just moved here." "Secret lover," the officer repeated as she wrote in her little notebook. "And how long have you been in the country?" "No, he's not my secret lover." Sienna rubbed her eyes, instantly regretting everything. One conversation with a uniformed officer was making it painfully clear how ill-equipped she would have been to pursue her childish dreams of a forensic scientist. Until now, she'd spent her whole life sheltered and coddled in her little Rocky Mountain town. Every officer in her hometown police force had known her since she was born. They'd known her grandparents and worked with her dad. Every single one of them would have given her the benefit of the doubt and truly believed she was innocent until proven guilty. Not here. She didn't even know if the burden of proof was on the prosecution in the UK. Was it possible that she would have to prove herself innocent? "You and every other woman in this building," the officer muttered as she finished writing, obviously still fixating on Sienna's flippant lover statement. It wouldn't matter now if Sienna insisted she was happily married with 2 children, or that she genuinely had never laid eyes on that man before. Anything more on the subject would make it seem like she was protesting too much. "Where were you when you heard the crash?" "I was at that table." She pointed to the round table where they had originally sat. "Can anyone corroborate that?" Darby, the woman in the glasses. She was just switching out a book when it happened. At the bookshelf? In the other room. The officer looked at the sliver of bookshelf barely visible through the gap. Yes, Sienna cringed. So you were alone. The officer raised her eyebrows, her pencil making another note. And the mystery motorcyclist. Anything else you can tell me about them? Sienna closed her eyes and took a deep breath, trying to forget all the completely ridiculous things she'd said and done up until that point, and just focus on what she'd seen. They were pretty average size, not small, but definitely not big. Maybe about my size? Forcing her shoulders to relax, she took another breath. Everything was covered but their hands. They didn't have manicured fingers, no polish or anything, but their hands weren't hairy either. She opened her eyes and smiled, just a faint whisper of a grin. She couldn't remember the license plate, nor had she been able to stop the person from leaving, but she'd recalled details she hadn't even realized she'd noticed. So we're looking for someone, not big but not small, not overly feminine but also not masculine. The officer was anything but impressed. Is that all? She seemed almost bored as she slipped her pencil and notebook back in her pocket. A plainclothes officer walked through the dining room, a silver candlestick in a plastic evidence bag, dried blood crusted on the edge. On impulse, Sienna glanced at Rhea, then just as quickly looked away. It's Bryant Coleman, the Bryant Coleman, the guy with the candlestick said as he passed the officer taking Sienna's statement. Last question. The officer ignored her counterpart and narrowed her eyes. What do you think happened to him? I think someone hit him with a candlestick in the kitchen. This isn't a game of Clue, Miss Thompson. The officer looked down her nose at Sienna before moving on to the table Missy was sitting at. What did he mean, the Bryant Coleman? Missy looked at Chloe, then quickly down at the table. The officer ignored Sienna, her attention now fully on Missy. There was something going on, something significant that the other women, even the officers, seemed to know about Bryant Coleman. Though the officer had moved on, her last question lingered. What do you think happened to him? A man was dead, maybe by accident, likely not. But there had been no one else in the dining room and no other staff left in the restaurant. As far as Sienna could tell, there were only two plausible options. Either someone had hit him and left, leaving the back door slightly ajar, or one of the 6 women she'd been having brunch with was responsible for the lifeless man in the kitchen. Chloe, Missy, and Darby were easy to rule out, with no means, motive, or opportunity as far as she could tell, but the other 3 had unaccounted for connections to the man and the murder. Anne-Marie was his soon-to-be ex-wife. Being married to a man like that would undoubtedly give her years of motive, not to mention what the divorce must be putting her through. But the sweet, hippie-like woman with her wild hair, flowing skirts, and infectious smile didn't look like she could so much as smash a spider. She seemed more the type to befriend the creature and give it a name, or peacefully shoo it into the garden. When Sienna had walked in, Anne-Marie had been the one with the biggest smile and the warmest hug. According to the true crime podcast, Murders Now, there were only 5 reasons anyone would commit murder: revenge, greed, jealousy, passion, and self-defense. Though she'd only known Anne-Marie for about an hour, she'd have a very hard time believing any of those applied to her. Even self-defense was doubtful from how gentle she seemed. Ria's candlestick was found by the body. There was no getting around that, but it didn't mean she'd killed the guy. Anyone at their table could have taken it from her bag while no one was watching. Most of the women had grabbed their purses or briefcases as they'd left. Any one of them could have been hiding the candlestick. Sienna shivered a little as she remembered the story about the kid stabbing the teacher with the pencil. Ria might be sweet. She was definitely Sienna's favorite, but she had a violent imagination. As much as Sienna didn't want to admit it, not even to herself, there was a small part that could easily believe Ria had it in her to kill someone, with proper motive. Vivian had left first, giving her the most time to go out front, sneak around back, hit him on the head, and run back through the alley to the front, just in time for Chloe to find her. "I went to the bathroom," Missy said from the next table over, "and the next thing I knew, Vivian was screaming." The tall blonde Vivian was in the far corner at the original round table the 7 women had shared. While the rest of them had one officer, the one with light brown hair, taking notes on paper and rotating between them, she had an officer of her own, the red light on his body cam clearly glowing. The police must have come to the same conclusion Sienna had. Vivian had the most opportunity and motive. Her officer stood and led her through the dining room past the partition. The front door opened and closed. "Excuse me?" Sienna leaned toward the officer, now interviewing Missy. "Where are they taking her?" "Giving a statement at the station, I suppose." She shrugged. "Either that or she asked for a lawyer." "That sounds about right." Missy folded her arms and leaned back in her chair. Sienna settled into her own chair, chewing on her bottom lip. Vivian didn't do it. She didn't know how she knew or what, if anything, to say to the cops about it, but something about watching Vivian walk out with the officer had made one thing very clear. Scotland Yard, or whatever the cops were called over there, were on the wrong path. Closing her eyes again, she blocked out the noise of Missy and the officer next to her, and tried to recreate in her brain exactly what she'd seen as Vivian had passed. What about her walking by had made her instincts so sure Vivian couldn't have done it? Besides the officer escorting her out, there had been nothing different about the woman. Not a speck on her flawless white suit, not a hair out of place. Her white clothes. Sienna had seen the crime scene. She'd stood next to the deep red marks on the floor and walls. She knew from personal, heartbreaking experience you couldn't so much as cook pasta in an outfit like that without ruining it, let alone bludgeon a man to death. Vivian couldn't have been in that kitchen when that man had died and left without so much as a smudge. So unless she had somehow had the exact same outfit stashed and had managed to kill him and change without anyone noticing, There was no way Vivian Walter was the killer. A phone rang. Yes? The officer interviewing Missy answered her phone, listening to someone on the other end. I understand. Yes, sir. She hung up and turned to Sienna. We need you to come to the station tomorrow for follow-up questions. Can you come to this location? The officer handed Sienna a card and waited for her answer. Okay, Sienna said, knowing she didn't have much choice. I'll come while my kids are at school. The officers finished their questioning and evidence gathering, shooed the women out of the restaurant, and cordoned off the front door, leaving Sienna and her new friends on the street as they pulled away in the 2 remaining blue and yellow police cars. What are we going to do? Sienna asked the 5 women standing next to her, watching the flashing lights weave through the stagnant rush hour traffic as cars inched out of the way. I don't blame Vivian for killing him, Darby said, still clutching the little book she'd gotten from the lone library before the crash. He had it coming, I guess, Anne-Marie shrugged, more a sense of relief in her voice than sorrow. I'm going home. Missy looked at the thick watch on her wrist. I've got early practice tomorrow. Wait. Sienna held up her hands. We can't leave yet. The police have missed something. She looked around at the weary faces staring blankly back at her. Vivian isn't the killer. She can't be. What do you mean? Chloe folded her arms, mirroring Missy's stance. We all saw her leave first, and we all know she never forgave him for what he did to Teddy. And I don't blame her. I'm just mad she dragged the rest of us into this. But her outfit. Sienna followed Chloe to the corner, the other women trailing behind. It's just not possible that she could have killed a guy and still been that clean. You saw her, you all did. Go home. Anne-Marie took her hand and squeezed it. Let the police deal with this. They'll work it all out. What did they mean by the Bryant Coleman? Sienna held on to Anne-Marie's hand. How did the officer know who he was? He stole money, she sighed. Apparently millions, from his job before being a teacher. She gave Sienna a sad half-smile and let go of her hand. The women filtered around Sienna, one by one leaving her alone on the corner of Shoe Lane and Fleet Street, with nothing but her worries for what the interview tomorrow would bring, and her questions about who Bryant Coleman really had been. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a mystery-loving friend, or consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast player. Most of all, thank you so much for being here today. I loved it, and I'm already excited for next week.